Next bill, Senate Bill 1968 by Chairman Briggs. Chairman Briggs, you're recognized.
This is, if you have it in front of you, this is a one-page bill also. And I'll just sum it up very quickly, is what it says is that you can only be on the ballot to run for one office at a time, and you can only serve in one office at a time. We have a couple of exceptions to that. One is that if you are in two offices presently, you'll be permitted to continue serving the term that you're already in. And the second is we're excluding people that are running for some of these are just purely political office, like the state executive committees. And there is a special case from a court ruling in California about qualifying as a candidate for a special election. And for that reason, I'd like to move Senate Bill 1968.
Motion on Senate Bill 1968. Is there a second? Second. All right. Question on the bill. Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious whether what the effective date of this legislation is. Because I think there are people that may be on the running campaigns right now that would be affected. Yeah. I'm curious if the effective date is immediate and is it intended to affect people who are currently in the midst of campaigns.
The Section 3 says this act takes effect upon becoming a law, the public welfare requiring it.
Okay, well, typically we don't try to regulate what's going on right in the middle of a campaign, but which I think does pose some complications. One question, this may be for legal, but I'll let the sponsor decide, Mr. Chairman. Would this preclude someone from qualifying and being on the ballot for two offices, regardless of what those offices are? I think so. So could you not? You couldn't qualify. You couldn't be on the ballot for two federal offices. Is that correct?
Let me do this, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'd like to go into recess if there's no objection and ask our Director of Elections to come forward to answer these questions.
I think it's a legal question, but...
Or would you prefer not?
I directed it to the council, but right. I'm happy to hear from whomever.
Right, let's let legal counsel first respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Yarborough, this does not specify any type of office that you cannot be on the ballot twice for. It just says you can't be on the ballot twice.
So I just want to ask one more hypothetical to the chair, which is, so I believe that so Senator Blackburn is up for re-election as United States Senator this year, but also is occasionally mentioned as a potential running mate for vice president. So this would mean that she could not be on the ballot for both of those offices as well, right?
Is that to me or
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman Briggs.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You know what we may want to do, because there's different federal laws that apply to some of these. It may be appropriate to have the Director of Elections up here, because some of these are already in the state constitution. Some of these are federal election laws, and so I think, just so I answer that question, or the question gets answered properly, it may be best to have the State Director of Elections up here.
And I have questions as well, Mr. Senator Yarborough.
If that's okay, yeah.
So if there's no objection, we'll go in recess and hear from our Director of Elections. If you come forward and you know the process, just please have a seat, make sure your microphone is on and close to you, and identify yourself. Thank you for being here.
Mark Goins, Coordinator of Elections for the great state of Tennessee. As the language is written, I do believe that would prohibit a scenario where someone was running for a U.S. Senate and also nominated to be Vice President of the United States. It's a little technical. It's technical in that the way the president works, you're really voting for electors. So as I was sharing with Chairman Briggs yesterday, I think it's a legal question. So reading the language, I think it would prohibit that. I also think there's a decent chance, because you're voting for electors to be in the electoral college, that someone would come in and say, well, she's not really on the ballot as a candidate for VP. I know that's very technical. You'll appreciate that as an attorney. But when you vote in November, you're truly voting for electors to go to the electoral college to vote for a candidate.
Right. But, I mean, this is sort of drafted in the terms of, like, this person can't appear twice on the ballot, right? I mean, I think that our intent here is pretty clear. So, okay.
Mr. Goins, I have a question. A constituent of mine in one of my counties holds an office of county commissioner and a separate office of city council member of one of the cities within that county. Tell me the impact of this bill if it were to become law on that person.
If they were on the ballot at the same time, they would not be able to do so.
If they were on the ballot at separate times, they could do so. So if it was, this year they're on one, 2 years from now they're on the other?
So there's a section 2 that might be better suited for legal counsel because it really doesn't hit elections, but it does talk about holding. So my jurisdiction ends once someone is elected, but there is a section 2 of this bill that talks about whether someone could hold 2 offices at the same time.
So let me turn to legal counsel. Do I need to go back into session to do that, or can we just do it while we're out of session? All right.
already.
So if our legal counsel could respond to that, I understood the director first say they could not be on the ballot at the same time, but if they could hold office at the same time as long as they weren't on the ballot at the same election?
So section 1 is about appearing on the ballot. So say if there was an election for the local government in August, and then there was another election for another local government in November, then that person could appear on both ballots because it's not the same ballot. Now, section 2 talks about an individual holding an elected office of a local government shall not hold another elected office in the state at the same time. So if they were elected to both of those offices, they would, if this were enacted, they would have to resign from one of those offices because they could not hold 2 offices at the same time.
I understand. That's something I have some concern about, but thank you. Other questions for our Director of Elections while we're out of session? Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do have a question, kind of some anomalous inequitabilities that are really very specific. This treats every kind of position equally across the board. I'm looking at multiple jurisdictions, except for a few small instances. So like in the event that somebody in an off-presidential year Senate serving term was to run for governor, those in a presidential serving term in the Senate body running for governor would have an advantage because they're currently not up for re-election during that time. Am I reading that correctly?
Yep. Correct.
And then I'm thinking of similarly off-election year senators who might want to run for property assessor. Like in my counties, property assessor's up now. The inverse would be accurate. So would it be fair to bake in some exceptions in those particular office holdings? Does that make sense? Everything else cycles equitably, even at the federal level with a 6-year Senate term. At the federal level, eventually it's going to fall on or off one or the other. House always cycles 2 years. House of Representatives always cycles 2 years. But the actual difference in the governor's race and those off-year property assessor races are the ones I'm thinking about.
So as far as, equitable, I mean, I think that's more a question for the sponsor. I will say for property assessor, it's a little different in that a majority of the counties now have a primary, particularly since the primary is paid for by the state because it's a presidential preference primary, and property assessor is one that's on the ballot this year. So in that instance, if you're running in a primary, you could hedge your bets somewhat, because you will know in March whether you will be the nominee to appear on the August ballot. Now, if you're on the ballot in August, of course, at that point, you would not want to qualify for another office, but you could somewhat hedge your bets if your county calls a primary. And like I say, the majority of the counties now have moved to primaries. So it's a little different than the scenario that you gave with the state senate, but your scenario, I believe, is correct, that if you're in an off year, you're not appearing on the ballot for that office, and it would be different for someone who's on the ballot that year that's running.
So just to clarify, it seems like if there is an inequitability, as there is, it's really just a problem for the Senate. It's really just kind of our problem that we have to work out.
Yes, and those that, now, the fact you're a nominee for property assessor doesn't mean you're going to win in August.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least you'll know, at least you'll know whether you're a nominee or not. And I'm not saying that all counties have a primary. I'm just saying that we're about 2/3 of the counties having those. So I suspect that if you're in that smaller subset and you are an elected official, then you'd have choices to make.
And just for clarity, Mr. Chairman, I put that forward just as we have those discussions, that people don't try to hijack the narrative to make it look like we're playing favorites with ourselves. It's actually where that anomaly exists. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think Senator Lowe's questions get to a complication that, I think this year maybe people can sort of navigate this, but it's not that unusual for people to think about, might be, in a race for a local office and contemplating a different office the same year. They might be an incumbent in an August election, but be seeking, an incumbent in a November general election, but be seeking a different county office that's up in an August election. And it is going to really complicate that process for those people, in the sense that they would otherwise be able to, retain their incumbent seat and seek the other office, which might be a complicated local primary or local election, and hedge bets, or whatever term we want to use. I just think this might have some unintended consequences that we haven't thought through, and I think that's always the risk when we have rule changes that are sort of targeted at one thing, that's very much in the news, that we don't actually think through how this whole system works, and I think there could be some unintended consequences here.
Well, we're out of session. Are there other questions for our director?
I do.
Senator Kyle, then we'll come back to you.
Thank you for being with us today. Let's talk about equity. This is inequitable for people wanting to run for office. We're throwing all kinds of, it's almost like a jigsaw. Well, if you're running for this office, you can't that one, but you can run for this other one at the same time. If there's so many exceptions, don't you think we ought to back up, open this up and discuss it and talk about it? Because we're not treating our citizens the same should they step up and want to run for this office that I hold right now. Isn't the point to give everybody the opportunity that wants to hold an office, that they will be treated equally as anybody else? This doesn't accomplish that.
Well, to be clear, this is an expansion of existing law. Existing law says you can't run for 2 county offices, you can't run for, there's various offices you can't run for. Can't run for 2 state offices at the same time. And also, to be clear, this is the sponsors bill. But, I think actually it's, and I don't know about equity, but it kind of streamlines it. Senator Lowe probably brings out the only thing that I can think of, an office that's out there, perhaps what Senator Yarborough has said, but it's, technically, if you're on the legal side, Senator Blackburn, if she were to be the VP, she's got a pretty strong argument that you're voting for electors. And so that's an open question, because that's how it actually works.
Well, we'll just have to agree to disagree, because you're making things very unfair for the citizens in Shelby County that I represent. This is not fair. This doesn't give everybody an equal opportunity to seek office. And these offices, I don't own this. There's other people that have served here that want to serve here. And we just can't continue to throw up rules and regs that block some people but definitely help others and give them leverage. I just think that this requires a deeper discussion. If you say that I'm wrong, if you say I need a little bit more knowledge, I stand for that. But right now, this is not treating citizens the same across the state.
Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick note. So I'm one of the senators that would be part of that anomaly, and yet I still support this bill because I think the voting populace, when we look at it from that angle, has a right to the assumption that when they cast a vote for someone to go into an office, that they're the likely candidate, if elected, to assume that office. When you're running for two simultaneous offices, you have the conflict with people who are voting for you don't have any reasonable certainty that you could assume the office of which you're running for. So the only assumption that you could make is that someone would take the higher of the offices elected if they were seen in some sort of hierarchy. So I do think that the way it's currently, and the goal to streamline it, is to create that fairness to the person in the ballot box. It may not necessarily be fair to us as candidates at times, but when I look at it from someone coming to cast a vote, if I'm casting a vote for you for county mayor and you're running for state senate, when I cast my vote for you for county mayor, I should be able to carry a healthy assumption that you want to be the county mayor and you will be the county mayor. And in the event that you abdicate that office, it creates a whole nother mess. So even so, as someone affected by the anomaly, the inequitable anomaly, I would still support this bill.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure we're clean on one piece of the legislative history. Because, I mean, it seems pretty clear by the language that we've chosen here that, like, the fact that there's an elector chosen as well, like, I mean, this doesn't just stop someone from, qualifying technically for a ballot. It says they shall not accept a nomination, shall not qualify to be nominated for anything that's voted on by the public. So their name shall not appear on the ballot, and like the Vice President of the United States unquestionably does. Their name, those people's names do appear. So and I think it unquestionably would apply in this situation. So I don't know if the intent is to go after, to limit the options of both people that are running the U.S. Senate race this year, then that actually might be something that that's more justifiable. But I do think it unquestionably will affect both, and it won't just affect this year. I mean, it will mean that any time somebody who's a senator or a governor from Tennessee, well, probably not a governor because there are different terms, but anybody who's an elected official in Tennessee who might be considered for vice president, they're not going to be, because they'll have to be, they're not eligible unless they just vacate the ballot line.
Chairman Briggs.
Let me just try to get back to the basics about why I think we need this bill. And this is, and we're still out of session, if I read present law correctly, we could have someone on a ballot that could run for county commission, city council, school board, city school board, county school board, and maybe other offices. The other thing is that they're just trying to throw something out there to see what sticks, or maybe they want to be on all of them at the same time. And the question is that in a democracy, how many offices should one person hold? And if you're just throwing it out there, sort of like what Senator Kyle mentioned, or maybe Senator Lowe, that they may take the highest one, you're going to have a special election. In my county, a special election can cost somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000. And if we start doing that on a routine basis, it's just how many offices should one individual hold? And shouldn't at some point he needs to make his mind up, his or her mind up, excuse me, about what they really want to do, rather than just, just throwing out there, seeing what sticks, and if it all sticks, by golly, I'll do it all.
All right, now we're still.
That's what the I think the essence of this is all about. Did I say anything incorrect? I mean, as far as the number of offices that one person could hold or run for.
Just to clarify, you're correct. You could run for city office, county office, state office, and federal office. So you could be on the ballot listed as, 4 different.
And now this is accepted. You could also run for state executive committee and be on the ballot. That, with that too. Now we do permit that one, but I mean, you're on the ballot a lot.
That'd be correct.
Senator Yeager? And we are out of session, so please let's direct our questions to our Director of Elections.
Well, I'll do that then. If I understand the bill, Mr. Director, this would prevent someone from running for 2 offices at the same time, except state executive committee and a delegate, a presidential delegate. But if a sitting officer, say a county mayor, wanted to run for the Tennessee House of Representatives, it would not prevent a sitting office holder from running from another office.
That's correct. There's instances where they would have to make a choice.
But if he got elected to the state house, or she, then he'd have to make a choice there. Couldn't hold both.
That's right. I don't think a county, well, you would know, you've been a county mayor. I don't think a county mayor can hold another office, but there's certain instances, some offices you can, some offices you can't.
Well, you're right, but I'm trying to get an understanding here. It prevents a person from running for 2 offices at the same time, but it does not prevent a current office holder from running for another office while he.
Absolutely, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, well, I have one more clarifying question, and then if there are others, we will certainly allow those to be presented to our director. Back to my scenario, I have a current city council person that also is a county commissioner, duly elected, very popular, one of our larger communities. If I understand correctly, from Section 1, as you were referencing, they could not appear on the ballot simultaneously, but under Section 2, if they were elected to both, even though they were not on there simultaneously, they could not serve in both.
That was what that's what Josh.
And that's where I have, concerns, because it would impact immediately, a real life scenario right now in my area.
There is a grandfathering clause. It does determine the grandfather clause does terminate when the term expires.
Yeah. So whenever the next election, they couldn't continue though.
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions for our director? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Goins. Safe travels.
Thank you.
We're back in session. Chairman Briggs, are there questions for the sponsor of the bill? Seeing none, Chairman Briggs, you care to close?
I think this is pretty clear. What I'm trying to do with this, or what we're trying to do with this, is, and I gave the example that was confirmed by our Director of Elections, that a person could theoretically, and there's maybe even more offices, but I think for some person to sit in 4 offices simultaneously is too much. That they just have to decide, what do you want to do, and then run for that office. And there does need to be limits on how much power. You have conflicts of interest. You have the cost if they decide they don't want to do one, and you have to have special elections. I think you run for an office because you want to be in that office, you want to serve in that office, and to try to hold multiple offices at the same time is just not good for democracy, and I would ask for a positive vote.
All right. Chairman Briggs has moved Senate Bill 1968. It had been properly seconded. It's before us. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Senator Jackson? Aye. Senator Jackson votes aye. Senator Kyle? No. Senator Kyle votes no. Senator Lowe? Aye. Senator Lowe votes aye. Senator Pody? Aye. Senator Pody votes aye. Senator Stevens? Aye. Senator Stevens votes aye. Senator Yeager? Aye. Senator Yeager votes aye. Senator Yarborough. Senator Yarborough votes no. Vice Chair Wiley.
Pass.
Vice Chair Wiley passes. Chairman Briggs.
Aye.
Chairman Briggs votes aye. Vice Chair, you have 7 ayes, 6 ayes, and 2 noes, and 1 present not voting.
So Senate Bill 1968 will go to the Committee on Calendar. Chairman Briggs, we are back, and I think Chairman Massey is next on our agenda, so I'll pass the gavel back to you.
First